Hey yo, welcome back. Glad you could join us for another deep dive.
Great to be diving in again.
So today we're getting into something pretty universal, something we all will eventually face, death.
A big topic.
Yeah, what's really going on is the way we typically think about it, the full picture.
It's definitely worth questioning our assumptions.
This whole thing kicked off for me after I watched this video on the Grandmaster Wolf YouTube channel.
Oh yeah, which one?
It was called What is Death? With GM Wolf and Matt Rickard. And they had some, really interesting takes that got me thinking.
Oh, okay. Yeah, those kinds of conversations can really spark something. It touches on, what it means to be human, fundamentally.
Exactly. And they use some analogies that kind of help frame it differently, take away maybe some of the fear.
Analogies can be useful for tackling these heavier subjects. So what was the first idea that sort of stood out to you?
It was this comparison they made, our bodies being like vehicles.
Okay, like a car.
Yeah, exactly, like a car. They said, our physical body, it has a kind of lifespan, right? Maybe 80, 100 years, something like that.
Like a car that eventually just wears out, needs replacing.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the key thing for me was they were saying that the death we talk about, it might just be the vehicle breaking down.
Uh-huh. Not necessarily the end of the driver, so to speak.
Exactly, not the end of what's, driving it.
It's a powerful way to reframe it, isn't it? It lets you consider that maybe this shell, this body that obviously breaks down, isn't everything. It isn't the totality of who we are.
Right, so that leads to the next question, which they got into. If the body is the vehicle,
Yeah.
then what's left? What remains when it stops working?
Mm-hmm. What's the driver in that analogy?
Yeah. They talked about pure essence or spirit or just awareness, that sort of core spark inside.
Okay, essence, spirit, awareness. Different words for maybe the same core concept.
I think so. And here's where it got really interesting for me. They were really clear that even when the body's gone, that fundamental sense of you, your identity, it sticks around.
So you still know who you are. It's not like just fading into nothingness.
Apparently not, according to them. You still have that self-awareness. They didn't use this exact analogy, but it made me think of like software running on different computers. The software's core code is still there, even if the hardware changes.
That's a good way to think about it. And did they have an analogy for how the body relates to this essence?
They did, yeah. It was about like a really smart car, an intelligent car that, recognizes its owner.
Ah, okay. How did that work?
The idea was that our bodies are kind of like these super-tuned instruments, and they recognize our specific presence, our individual you-ness.
So the body knows who's in the driving seat.
Kind of, yeah. And when that presence, that awareness leaves, the instrument just stops. It ceases to function because the operator isn't there anymore.
Right, like the car recognizes the driver has physically left the vehicle.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. And that sort of led into this other idea, which was pretty mind-bending, about feeling like we're separate individuals.
Oh yeah, without it.
They actually called it a delusion of living in matter.
A delusion, wow, okay.
Yeah, like the strong feeling we have of being totally separate, unconnected.
Yeah.
They suggested maybe that's a kind of survival mechanism, but maybe not the ultimate truth of things.
Okay, I think I see where they're going. It's like we need that sense of self to navigate the world, but maybe it's not the whole picture. Did they use an analogy for that too?
They did, actually. It was pretty vivid. Imagine driving down a highway. You feel safe, independent, just you in your own little metal box.
Right, isolated but secure.
Exactly. But then maybe there's a near miss, like a huge bus almost slams into you.
Whoa, okay. Heart-stopping moment.
Right. And in that instant, that feeling of separation, of safety, it just shatters. You're suddenly aware of how connected everything is, how fragile it all is.
Ah, I get it. The illusion of isolated safety disappears, and you feel part of a bigger, maybe more chaotic system.
Yeah, that really landed for me. It makes you think maybe this feeling of being just me inside my skin is, maybe it's an illusion, like I said.
Yeah.
And maybe we're way more connected to, something bigger that we usually feel.
Which brings us back to that animating force, right?
That's where they shifted the focus. They started talking about looking inward, finding our own awareness.
Okay, so moving from analogies about the body to the nature of consciousness itself.
Yeah. They encouraged you, the listener, to sort of identify that part of yourself that just watches, the part that observes your thoughts, your emotions, but isn't really caught up in them.
The observer, the witness.
Right. Let's try and unpack that a bit, this awareness idea.
Sure.
It's like
Mm-hmm.
that quiet background, isn't it? Always there, while thoughts and feelings are like clouds passing in front of it.
Mm-hmm. They stress that this awareness is constant, yeah, like a steady presence. Unlike our thoughts, which are always jumping around, or our feelings, which can swing wildly.
Yeah, exactly. Your mind can be buzzing one minute, totally quiet the next. You can feel happy, then sad. But behind all that,
That underlying awareness, that quiet noticing, it just is. It remains.
and crucially, they pointed out, this awareness,
Yeah,
it doesn't get old. It doesn't decay like the body does.
right. It's the same fundamental awareness you had when you were 5 years old. It hasn't aged a day, has it?
That's wild when you think about it. So
Yeah.
if the awareness is timeless, unchanging,
Mm.
and the body is temporary, always changing,
Yeah.
then the big question is, what are we, really, at our core?
Mm-hmm. Which naturally leads into things like meditation, mindfulness, and the whole concept of enlightenment.
Exactly. That's where enlightenment comes in.
And it's interesting because these ancient practices, these philosophies, they weren't just like intellectual exercises, were they?
No, not at all. They came from this really fundamental question. Okay, am I this body that's going to die? Or am I something else? Something more?
Which one am I? And practices aimed at experiencing that awareness directly. Well, that's often what Enlightenment traditions are about, isn't it? Trying to get a direct answer to that question, not just a belief.
Right. And they also touched on the idea that maybe way back when, this kind of understanding, this awareness was maybe more common, more
Wow.
accessible.
Yeah, they had a specific viewpoint on that, a bit pointed, actually. They suggested that sometimes organized religion might have perhaps unintentionally suppressed that direct experience of awareness.
How so?
Well, the idea being if you can directly connect to your own, essential nature, maybe you don't need intermediaries or strict doctrines quite as much. It shifts the power dynamic, perhaps.
Interesting perspective.
Mm.
They also had this other thought about the past, something about the environment.
Oh, yeah, that was cool. They said something like, in the past, there was maybe less to think about, more to look at.
Less to think about, more to look at.
Huh. It makes you wonder, right? If life was less cluttered mentally, more focused on the present moment, maybe that naturally helped people stay connected to that underlying awareness. Less distraction.
Could be. It's an interesting thought. And sort of building on that, shifting perspectives, they brought up a modern example. Oh, what was it? A place. Himalayas.
Ah, Bhutan.
Yes, Bhutan. That was it. Thanks.
Yeah, Bhutan's fascinating. Their whole approach to, well, national well-being.
Right. Because they don't just focus on GDP, gross domestic product.
No, they famously prioritize G&H, gross national happiness. It's actually in their constitution, I believe.
Seriously. In the Constitution. Wow.
Yeah, it's a very deliberate choice to value something beyond just the material, beyond economic output.
That's a real-world example, then, of a society kind of consciously valuing, well, maybe a different kind of awareness, or at least a different measure of fulfillment.
It certainly suggests different priorities, different ways of looking at what makes for a good life.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? What do you value? How does your idea of who you are, maybe beyond just the physical, influence those values?
So as we kind of wrap this up, it's clear this conversation they had, Grandmaster Wolf and Matt Ricard, it really goes deep, doesn't it? Into some profound stuff about being human and maybe what comes next.
Absolutely. And look, whether you buy into all these ideas or not, just spending some time thinking about them and considering these different angles, it can really expand your perspective.
Definitely. It challenges those everyday assumptions we have about who we are, what death is, what reality itself might be. Doesn't hurt to question things.
Not at all. It's good for the mind.
So maybe a final thought for you listening. That constant awareness they talked about, the observer within, what does that feel like to you? What might it tell you about who you really are?
Yeah, sit with that for a bit. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in and diving deep with us again today. We really appreciate you exploring these big ideas with us.
Yeah, keep pondering.
Keep pondering, exactly. We'll catch you on the next one.